We've talked a lot about so many players on the Orlando Magic, but one player has slipped through the cracks. It's time to start the most improved player candidacy for Jalen Suggs, why he is due for a big season today on Locked On Magic.
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And you are indeed Locked On Magic. Today is August 18th. It will be August 19th, 2025. My name is Philip Rossman-Reich. I'm the senior writer over at OrlandoMagicDaily.com, credentialed member of the Orlando Magic media since the 2012 season. On today's episode of Locked On Magic, we're going to finally get to it. I've been teasing this episode for so long. I am so excited to give a full episode to Jalen Suggs because for all the changes that have happened for the Orlando Magic, the biggest one is Jalen Suggs' return. Why I think he is due to be the most improved player of the year in the NBA and how he's going to boost the Magic even more. We're going to get to that coming up here in just a moment. But first, we want to thank you again for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. No matter when you listen to us, whether it's first thing in the morning, whether it's right when we upload, we truly appreciate you making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. We truly appreciate all of our Orlando Magic dailies who listen to Locked On Magic 5 days a week. We're still going 5 days strong somehow, even in the depths of the offseason. It's all part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. FanDuel football season is around the corner. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now. There have been a lot of changes to the Orlando Magic. A lot of changes. Desmond Bane, we've covered him a ton, is a player that people around the league, it's not just Magic people around the league believe is going to transform this Magic offense. The kind of shooting that he provides, the secondary playmaking he provides, the fact that he's this great shooter and also a solid defender, not going to take away from the Magic's core identity. He is a big piece of the puzzle for the Orlando Magic. And that acquisition, that all-in move, that push to change things is the reason why there is so much optimism around the Orlando Magic. Obviously, there's still more work to do. As we learned last year, adding one shooter doesn't change the formula. But I would argue the Magic aren't just adding one shooter. They're adding two shooters. They signed Tyus Jones too. The Magic aren't just adding two shooters to this year's roster. They're adding three shooters. Because something is hidden deep within the numbers for Jalen Suggs. Something is hidden deep inside that I think is going to be optimized this season. The fact of the matter is, the Magic did not get to play Jalen Suggs in his optimal role last year. Yes, we got to see him reach his full potential. I want to talk a little bit about that playmaking and what we saw from him when he was the guy and how that can still be a factor for him this season. But you look at his full season numbers last year, and again, 35 games, not a whole lot. A career high 16.2 points per game. He dropped back down to 41% shooting on 13.7 field goal attempts per game. He's back down to 31.4% from three, which is going to make what I'm going to talk about the rest of this segment seem a little odd. He had a 48.9% effective field goal percentage, the worst since his rookie year. He doesn't do anything statistically that jumps out on the page, but at the same time, that's what he was forced to do. Because he played the majority of those 35 games that he played last year without Paolo Banchero, without Franz Wagner. The fact that he played only 6 games and 97 minutes alongside the Magic's two best players put Jalen Suggs in the wrong role. If you've listened to this show for several years, and I sat here and defended Nikola Vucevic and defended Evan Fournier and defended Aaron Gordon, I would always say they're clearly talented players. Like Nikola Vucevic is still killing it with the Chicago Bulls, still, maybe not an all-star level talent, but a notch below. Aaron Gordon is Mr. Nugget. The Denver Nuggets could not imagine playing without Aaron Gordon. It's because they found the right role. Players are typically not bad because they're bad players. It's because they're in the wrong role for their talent. They're in the wrong role for their abilities. They're asked to do too much. And undoubtedly last year, the Magic asked Jalen Suggs to do too much. And with how he plays anyway, and he's not going to change the way he plays. He is going to continue to be, balls to the wall, all gas, no brakes. Like, he's going to continue to be that chaotic defensive engine. Except now, the Magic don't need him to do that on offense. Because the fact of the matter is, when this Magic team has been healthy, Jalen Suggs has been every bit the elite, maybe not elite, but maybe elite volume shooter the Magic have been desperate for. I'm going to give you some numbers, and we're going to say small sample size theater, but there is enough reason, in my opinion, to believe Jalen Suggs can be an excellent shooter. Or, in fact, is already an excellent shooter. Like I mentioned last year, he shot 31.4% from three, took a career high 6.9 3-point attempts per game. So the volume's already crept up. He finished the year shooting 34.5% on 4.2 catch and shoot 3-point attempts per game, according to data from Second Spectrum. If you look at that macro view of the entire season, yeah, not a good 3-point shooting season. I'm going to sound crazy here. But let's narrow the context, because that context matters. It's about role, the kind and quality of 3-point shots he's taking and who he's on the floor with. The attempts were the only encouraging sign. But put Jalen Suggs in a lineup with Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner, and all of a sudden things change. In the 5 games before Paolo Banchero's oblique injury, so it does include the Chicago game, in the first 5 games of last season, Jalen Suggs shot 17 for 40 and 17 for 40 from 3. That's 42.5%. He shot 53.1% on 6.4 catch and shoot 3-pointers per game. Again, volume is the point. That is a very good thing. He was a high volume shooter. And at that point, he was the only player making threes for the Magic. The Magic shot just 31.1% from 3 when Suggs and Banchero were on the floor. Again, Suggs shot 42.5% overall, 53.1% on catch and shoot threes. 5 games is hardly a sample to say much of anything. So let's go back to the 2024 season, the lone season where Suggs was mostly healthy. The only season, again, Paolo was healthy, Franz was healthy. There's no injury issues. Suggs shot 39.7% from 3 that season. He shot 40.7% on 3.8 catch and shoot 3-pointers during the 2024 season. Now, does that mean he's going to shoot 43% from 3 and 50% on catch and shoot threes next year? No, that sample is way too small. Numbers would have normalized. But is it crazy to think that Jalen Suggs could shoot 40% on catch and shoot threes, especially now that you're adding Desmond Bane to the mix? Is it crazy to think Jalen Suggs could be a guy who's taking 5, 6, maybe even 7 catch and shoot 3-point attempts per game? Or at least 5 or 6 3-point attempts per game, with 4 or 5 of them being catch and shoot threes, high quality threes, because the defense is sucked in. And he becomes he becomes an elite catch and shoot 3-point shooter alongside another elite shooter in Desmond Bane. We talk about the things it's going to take for the Orlando Magic to become a contending team. And like Desmond Bane being Desmond Bane is a big piece of this puzzle. That's the gravity he's going to create on the floor. But if the Magic really want to be a title contending team, this development, which has already been hinted at, I'm not just pulling this out of thin air. It's not made up. It's something that there's evidence that can happen. It's Jalen Suggs becoming this elite level shooter too. That is a big, big piece of this puzzle, because we know what Jalen Suggs is going to give defensively. We know the pace and speed he's going to bring to the game. We know that he can attack a little bit, but his best role is essentially this mega 3-and-D player. And for the first time in his career, the Magic don't need Jalen Suggs to be a high volume, high creation scorer. He's not the player we all imagined when they drafted him, obviously, but they don't need him to be this elite level scorer. They need him to space the floor, attack when it's there. But on most nights, he's going to be the 4th option. Desmond Bane will be the 3rd option offensively. He's going to get the points. He's going to get some scoring. Jalen Suggs is going to be playing off of others. And while that sounds like a demotion, it's actually the best way to optimize him. I am really bullish. I am really, really high on what Jalen Suggs is going to do. And I know he's got to bounce back from the injury, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that coming up here in a minute. But I really believe Jalen Suggs is due for a big season. So what does everyone else think about it? Let's talk about that coming up here in just a moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. August 26th is officially FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week one even kicks off, this is your moment. FanDuel Futures Day is next Tuesday, 1 week from when this podcast is being published, to get your futures bets in on the NFL. There are so many great futures bets to go for in the NFL as well, whether you're looking at playoffs, whether they're going to make the playoffs. You're looking at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, minus 158, favored to make the playoffs. Want to go a little bolder than that? The Jacksonville Jaguars, plus 172, not terrible odds. Miami Dolphins, plus 210. You can get future specials like the NFC South have fewer than 29.5 regular season wins total. That's minus 135. So they're favored at least to beat that. The Dolphins, Browns, Saints, and Titans each to miss the playoffs is all even money. There are so many options on FanDuel to get you set for the NFL season. So visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now for next week's FanDuel Futures Day, because Futures Day is one day and one day only. FanDuel, play your game. We're going to talk about some NBA futures then. NBA futures, not eligible for Futures Day. Sorry, we'll hopefully have an NBA Futures Day promotion when we get closer to the NBA season. But I don't, we haven't talked a lot about Jalen Suggs on this show. He's kind of been out of sight, out of mind, because obviously there's the shiny objects, Paolo Caro, Franz Wagner, and their potentials to be all-stars. There is Desmond Bane, the shiny new toy that everyone gets to play with. And frankly, we haven't seen Jalen Suggs play since January. And I'm interested to talk to him more seriously. I chatted with him a little bit during the introductory press conference for Jace Richardson. He was in the building. He's been in and out of Orlando. I think he spent a lot of time in Minnesota and Chicago as well. We were chatting with him, and he said, surgery's going, the recovery from the surgery is going great. He's back on the court doing things, just kind of slowly ramping up. I don't know if he's playing yet, but there's definitely a little bit of uncertainty with Jalen Suggs. I mentioned all those shooting stats, and all that's great. And again, I am really, really bullish. I think Jalen Suggs is now in the perfect role for him. And I think he's in a place where he can really, really grow. And I think this is a really good spot for him. But all of this is assuming that Jalen Suggs is healthy. The injury that he had, the trochlea injury, again, that's like the cavity that your kneecap rests in. And the surgery that he had, the mosaic-plasty, it was not just like a scope. Like a lot of us were, when the surgery was initially announced, a lot of us thought it was sort of like an arthroscopic surgery, which isn't a huge deal, but he had a mosaic-plasty, which is something to try and treat it a little bit more long-term. So I think there is a little bit of question about how ready he'll be for the season. And he'll be ready for training camp. I don't think that's going to be an issue, but he's got to gain trust in that knee again. This is going to be a little bit of a recovery process for him. So I do think the fact that the Magic can ease him in offensively, especially, is going to be really, really big. But he's got to find that range and find that growth again. And again, that's what preseason's for. That's what training camp's for. Hopefully he's going to get some pickup runs in. Hopefully everything is okay. As far as we know, everything's on track, but you don't really know till he's on the floor. And so that's I do think we have to pause and note that this is a bigger injury. I don't think it's like reconstructive knee surgery. It isn't like a torn ACL where there's this long rehab process, but it is a bigger injury than I think people let on, or that certainly I think a bigger injury than the Magic let on, or a little bit more involved surgery than the Magic let on at the beginning. Having said that, we're not talking about Jalen Suggs. We haven't talked about him much on this show. We haven't talked about him much. We haven't talked about him much this summer. And I think that it's really easy to forget the kind of energy he brings to a game. Even though the Magic still finished second in the league in defensive rating, the Magic's defense lost a little bit of its edge without Jalen Suggs. The Magic lost a little heart. They don't lose those games to Toronto and Chicago and Portland. Again, Portland was pretty good toward the end of the year, but I don't think the Magic lose some of those games they lost if Jalen Suggs is on the floor, because he kind of wills people with him. You don't slack off when Jalen Suggs is on the floor. That's just fact. You don't. He won't. You can't. You watch him play, you can't help but try to play as hard as he does, and you obviously can't, because he's just a maniac. He's an insane person. Like I remember, early in the season last year, I was sitting next to Mason Williams, who's covering for Magic on SI. It was his first time watching the Magic, and he got his first live look at Jalen Suggs, and he was like, "Oh, this guy is crazy." And I turned to him. I'm like, "Yeah, he's an insane person. He's just a crazy person when he's on the court." And you don't appreciate that until you watch him a ton. You kind of take it for granted. This is a season where he's going to be in front of a lot more eyes. It's not just like the national TV stuff. It's, the Magic are a contending team. And Jalen Suggs is very much the kind of player a contending team needs to give them an edge. And that's why I think Suggs is a really good candidate to be most improved player, because he's just someone everybody's forgot about. He's just not in a lot of the conversations. He wasn't, he was named to the top 10 perimeter defenders on NBA 2K. There's certainly people who know and still talk about him, but I think generally we haven't seen him since January. It's been 8 months since we've seen him play. Now, almost 7 months now since we've seen him play. It's easy to forget and understand and feel that impact. So, you look at the FanDuel futures, and I did pull this up. Jalen Suggs is currently plus 4,000, so 400 to 1 to win most improved player. Not terrible odds, best on the Magic. I'm just going to quickly scan to see if there's other Magic players on this list. I'm not seeing any as I'm scanning through here. Good shot. Anthony Black's plus 15,000. So, Jalen Suggs not a favorite. The favorite right now is Andrew Nembhard at plus 900. That's a decent bet. Benedict Mathurin at plus 1,500. Amen Thompson plus 2,000. So, nobody really knows who's going to be most improved player, but Jalen Suggs is someone whose impact is going to be felt. Obviously the Magic's defense is going to be what the Magic's defense is going to be. And he is, as Jamal Mosley always says, the head of the snake on defense. Magic did a really good job defensively, even though they didn't have him. He's someone that elevates their game. And that, I think, is the big point. Like, Desmond Bane is a big acquisition because he makes this team better. Jalen Suggs is big because he takes the team from level B to level C. He elevates the team up a notch because he does the little things and gives the team that little energy boost that they may not otherwise have. Honestly, I think we can all agree the Magic in 2024 outperformed a little bit. 47 wins, 5th seed. They played a little bit above their heads. I don't think it's a coincidence that was the season that Jalen Suggs was healthy and that the Magic got more from Jalen Suggs. And again, Paolo came into his own, Franz came into his own a little bit. Guys settled into roles that maximize their skills, and that enabled Suggs to kind of be this elevator on the team. This is the big point of this episode, is that Jalen Suggs is now in a role that allows him to do these things more effectively. He is not going to be asked, for the most part, to do A, B, C, D, and E. D and E are out the door. He only has to do A, B, and C. Defend, make threes, secondary attack, push the pace. So, maybe there's a D still. He's going to be asked to do much less because that burden's going to be shared to other players who are more capable of doing them. And I think that is incredibly important. Again, it's about roles. I had a long back and forth with someone after yesterday's episode about Franz Wagner shooting. And look, I agree. Franz Wagner does not need to take 5 or 6 threes anymore. That's a good thing. Limits his attempts. He just has to be good enough on those attempts to make teams challenge him. But the Magic don't need him to be a volume 3-point shooter anymore. They don't. If he's taking 3 or 4, maybe 5 tops, 5 threes per game, that's fine. You make 2 of 5 threes, we're going to be very happy with that. Jalen Suggs can thrive and be very good taking 6, 7, 8 threes per game, alongside Desmond Bane taking 6, 7, 8 threes per game. And I think that's going to maximize the other parts of his game. Of course, though, this Magic team is built a little differently. They want to have everyone do everything. So, what does that mean for Jalen Suggs? Let's talk about what he showed when he was the guy, coming up here in just a moment. So, like I said, I think there is an ideal role for Jalen Suggs. And I think that it sounds like I'm saying you're pushing him down the pecking order. And that is essentially what I'm saying. But I think that gives him the best chance to make the biggest impact. It means he puts more focus, defensive energy, or puts more focus, energy, and attention on the defensive end. We know that's going to be there anyway. Now he's risking his body less on offense too. He doesn't have to do wild drives. I don't think the Magic need him to do crazy drives to the basket. They need him to push the pace. I think they should definitely be telling him, hey, you're our tempo pusher. Get it up court. Go, 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 go. I think that's a big thing too. But Jalen Suggs isn't going to be asked to do a lot of the things that he's been asked to do before. However, we can't ignore that the Magic's offense is built a little different. They have roles, obviously, and they have ideas and concepts they want to get at. But the whole thesis of what the Magic are doing is that everyone does everything. Like Jalen Suggs is going to set screens for Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner. Jalen Suggs is going to play point guard. He's going to bring the ball up the court, and that means you have to be at least a little bit of a threat to drive. And that does mean that, yeah, sometimes you are going to be the guy. In the games that the Magic played between Franz Wagner's injury and Jalen Suggs' injury, it was only 10 games. They went 4-6. Jalen Suggs did his best. I want to give him the credit on that. He averaged, he averaged, if I could find the point total here, averaged 18.6 points per game, shot 41% from three, 30.4 or 41% from floor. That would be really good from three. 41% from floor, 30.4% from three. He had 3.3 turnovers per game against 3.1 assists per game. He was asked to do a lot. And obviously, like at that time, it was minus 14 overall, minus 1.4 points per game. At the time, obviously, there wasn't a lot around him. He had some big games in the process. He scored a career-high 32 against the Milwaukee Bucks and then in that NBA Cup game. But he followed that up with 9 against the New York Knicks and then another 9 against the Oklahoma City Thunder in a game he played only 17 minutes because he got hurt in that game. He had 29 in the loss to the Miami Heat, that 1-point loss to the Heat. He had 27 in the blowout loss to the Knicks at the Kia Center. He had some big scoring games. And obviously some of it was just he didn't have the teammates around him to kind of boost him up that way. And so, like, there are going to be games where Suggs can take over. There's still going to be games and opportunities for him to do that. The Magic don't want Suggs to be just a 3-and-D shooter. I think that is his primary role. I think that is where he will primarily find his effectiveness. But the Magic don't want him doing that exclusively. The Magic don't want that to be the only thing that he does. But the Magic probably understand that a secondary attacker is his best job and is his best role. Part of the thesis of this team is they didn't want to take the ball out of Paolo and Franz's hands. We looked at a lot of point guards, a lot of fans pitched me Trae Young ideas, they pitched me LaMelo Ball ideas, and I was just like, no, I mean, like, besides whether you like those players or not, they're both good players. Questionable how much they actually impact winning. And Trae Young, I think, has come a long way in the last 2 years. But the Magic did not want players like that because they took the ball out of their best players' hands. And so someone like Jalen Suggs, who may or may not have the point guard skills the Magic are looking for, or the Magic may actually need, the kind of game management skills the Magic may actually need. But a player like Jalen Suggs, accomplishes what the Magic want. Someone who can handle the ball enough to get up the court, get the team organized, get the team into a set, and give it to the guys they actually want to have the ball in their hands for, Paolo and Franz. He doesn't take away from their 2 best players. Having said that, Jalen Suggs still needs to be able to attack the basket. Jalen Suggs still needs to be able to make something happen around the rim. And that is an area where he at times struggled last year. Just looking at his drives, according to data from Second Spectrum, just looking at his drives. So I'm going to pull up these stats here because I was not prepared for this, prepared for where my conversation was going to go. Just looking at his drives, he started on the team in drives last year with 8.0 drives per game. Again, small sample, 35 games, whatever. He shot 45.4% on those drives. Not terrible. It's well behind Paolo at 49.8, Franz at 48.8. Not nearly efficient enough. Averaged only 4.5 points per game. Had a half turnover per game off his drives. Again, not terrible stuff. The majority of his points are not coming off of drives. Like Paolo scores 16. Paolo's going to score on 74% of his drives. Jalen Suggs at 55.7. And so what I think we need to see from Jalen Suggs is we need to see those assist totals come up. If the Magic are going to have better shooting, and look, he averaged 3.7 assists per game. First time over 3 assists since his rookie year. Good stuff. Good news. What the Magic want to see is to see him take that step up, take that next leap up. And this is a situation and a scenario with more shooting around him. And again, the shooting is key. Like Bane's good, Jones is good. Hopefully Paolo's improved. Hopefully Franz, we've talked a lot about Franz's shooting, but Franz is enough of a shooter to give some space. This is how Jalen Suggs reaches his full potential. And ultimately, I think what's important is he is in a role that's going to help him reach his potential and help give the team the boost they need. I want to repeat this. I am really high on Jalen Suggs' potential as a pure catch and shoot 3-point shooter. I think the evidence is there that he has taken that kind of a leap. And it's not there in the full numbers because of the context those numbers exist in. But I think he is going to have a really strong season. The kind of season that gets some notice, the kind of season that makes everyone understand this is how you optimize this player. And if that happens, that's what's going to carry the Magic into title contention. We're not ignoring Jalen Suggs. I don't want to ignore Jalen Suggs anymore. But this is a big, big season and a big opportunity that I think Jalen Suggs is set up to succeed in. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. You, of course, find me on Twitter at @PhilipRR_OMD and on Blue Sky at PhilipRR. You can subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Himmel, Google Play, Spotify, Odyssey, and all the Phil Mason Alone podcasts to your podcast-enabled listening device. You can check us out on YouTube as well. Just search for Locked On Magic. For the latest on the Orlando Magic, check out OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can find us on Twitter at OMagicDaily. And for even more Orlando Magic content, be sure to check out my Patreon page, Orlando Magic Hub, at patreon.com/Orlando Magic Hub. As always, thank you for your support. Now that you're done listening to me making Locked On Magic your first listen of the day, go make Locked On NBA your second listen of the day because there is no offseason. Doug, Matt, and Hayes keep you up to date on contract negotiations, rumors, and everything you need to be the most informed NBA fan. Find Locked On NBA on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's all part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. That's going to do it for me today. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. On tomorrow's episode of Locked On Magic, it's time to do some opponent reviews. We're going to chat with Locked On Knicks to learn a little bit more about where the New York Knicks stand, one of the Magic's potential big rivals. We'll get to that on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Magic. But until then, for Orlando Magic Daily and Locked On Magic, this has been Philip Rossman-Reich. We'll see you all again next time for another episode of Locked On Magic.